just need to be legitimized for that.
Okay, so the stream is officially started, and yeah, what we were just talking about is, for anyone who is going to be watching the video, is we were discussing the point-based system in the election for Civ and whether it should have been done in rounds.
And that's partly why I was for the bracket system. I know it's a different system, but at least you can go through each civ and like see them head to head and decide, oh, I like this one over that one, and eventually you get to some interesting.
I think the head-to-head is I mean, it's a bit overkill in the sense we don't really need to see that for every single civ. I think it's fair to say if we had the ballot of 43, is it 44 now with Ottoman?
It's 43 now.
Okay, so 43, like, people pick, they pick, oh, that nation sounds fun, I like that nation, I've played that nation before, it's cool to play. They kind of just, like, we get a feel for what they want, and then we pick, like, the top 5, 10, 15, and then we put that into a ballot.
I'm cool with that. It's just when I was
because also, like we said earlier, if you have 43 things, you can win with like 5% of the vote, which doesn't really work in a point-based system, but you see my point there, where it can be very unrepresented.
Well, you're not going to win a point-based system if you only have that small percentage of the vote. You have to have a lot of support. If you're going to have that low of first votes, you've got to have a lot of secondary support. Again, I'm not going to reveal any results yet, especially because it's still ongoing and stuff can change. But right now, one of the front runners in the race actually is there almost entirely because of secondary votes.
Yeah, it's kind of to be expected, but I still don't think, even if it's just popular, it definitely doesn't feel like we've had enough debate to be picking a civ already. And we don't really have any political groundwork for how the politics of the game is going to go down, which does affect the civ, and the civ vote affects the politics.
I have tried to do all the prompting I can to get people to do campaigns, and we've had 4 campaign posts so far. Not great, but
this has been nice, but I don't think without like political infrastructure down with parties and stuff, there's not going to be massive campaigns unless there's like a popular candidate already. But
yeah, and I just don't see why.
Yeah.
I personally would be kicking off a campaign, but because I'm doing this stuff, I'm staying out of the political aspect, or I would be doing the campaign that I want to do.
I mean, I know you might disagree, but I think part of it, honestly, is the mods not legitimizing it. Because I feel like people are not... Like, they can have their own servers, and they can start... I mean, obviously, parties have already started fruition, but I feel like it's not quite evident who's part of what party and where, and there's no sort of centralized place for parties to come and talk and discuss things. It's just a bunch of individuals right now on the main server.
Well, I do think there is valid reasons for them not doing parties. I do feel like we should keep parties outside of the Constitution making.
I agree.
Which is why I kind of dislike the monarchist thing, because they're like built around doing something in the Constitution, but whatever. It's not that bad.
I just think that, like...
Which is why I also think we should just not have been having the civ vote right now. There's very little point. We might get some flavor text in the Constitution. Ooh.
They unpinned the reference document.
Do you want to tell people to hop on? I don't know if they really know if they're on.
So I'm looking at the poll about do you plan to campaign for your Civ choice, and there's 16 people that said yes, but there's not 16 campaigns. There's not that much support.
Well, I mean, that's the magic of polling, right?
Right.
It's not always correct. Even people lie to themselves in polls. Something we don't really recognize here, but
Well,
it
I
happens.
I recognize it. I just
I don't think as a community we
I think
recognize it on
it's
the whole.
very important that people are doing politics here. One big thing about when we picked China was that it was very political. We actually had groups
Yeah, that's
gathering together, conspiring in secret. We made a big deal out of this choice. And if you're not campaigning, we're going to get a choice that people aren't happy with. And it's nobody's fault but the voters that they weren't coordinating or
okay,
planning on.
but you're blaming it on the voters when it also has to do with why we're doing it right now when we shouldn't and don't really have the full political spectrum we're going to have most likely by the start of the game. So we should not be doing it now.
There's
I think that
certain
was honestly a
contexts.
pretty bad decision. And
There's
the
certain
politics
contexts.
of parties is not the same as the politics of posting a picture on Reddit and being like, vote for Mally. It's not the same at all. There was deals for bills and appointments, speakerships, I think, with that went through China. Went through with the vote for China. Like, it's so much different, and just to say that the voters not being like, I like this Civ, kind of like a half-hearted campaign without actually having a reason other than, I don't know, we like this Civ. Not a good point.
Well, Dejukes is saying that we're taunting, or maybe it's just me taunting him. I don't know if that's plural or not. He should just go all Texan and say y'all. 'Cause, I would read, now y'all are just taunting us. That would make.
Y'all is a great word. It shouldn't be associated with any state. It should
You're
be
trying
an
to take
English
it away from
fact.
Texas now?
I'm trying to give it to the masses.
Uh huh. Did you just call Texas asses?
Neutral.
They already have it.
Yeah, I
So I'm
heard.
calling everyone
I
but
heard what you
Texas
said.
asses.
You said you're trying to give
That
it
would
to
be calling
them
every.
asses.
No, I said the.
Yeah, I heard that.
Have we had any new proposals?
We have not. It has been, not very long since the last meeting on Saturday, so I'm not surprised not a lot has gotten done. I've had a lot going on, so I haven't got the work done that I really hoped I would. So, what I would like to do is start the working draft. And
Okay.
so, is there? Does everyone have the link to that? I'm going to post a. I'm going to make it so it can be edited. But I'm going to post this in the meeting channel. And right now it's just a placeholder, but what I want to start doing is I was working on something with Masenko, and Masenko has got his own updated version. So let me check the. I think I have it pinned in here. Mark 5 proposals. Masinko's table of proposals. Does that have the links in it?
But mine is there. The channel.
Okay, I'm pulling up. So I'm pulling up the Constitution draft that Masenko did.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey.
Has the meeting started?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was... Okay.
Yeah, we haven't really gotten anywhere, though, so...
We just talked a bit about the civ vote.
Yeah, people are complaining, blaming me. I'm pretty sure they're going to start calling for my head soon. Does anyone want to start that? Do we have a motion to call for my head?
Take your feet.
No. RBD, anything for that?
For what?
Remove Espresso as head organizer and recall it and do a revote on head organizer?
No, I thought you just wanted to remove my head.
Oh.
There's a
Your foot
big
instead.
miscommunication here. I'm okay with decapitation, but being fired?
I'm okay with the decapitation if I keep my job. Okay. Understandable. So, okay, so almonds are in the vote now, okay. Is that good? Is that all we talked about?
Okay, yeah, it's just the vote. What I want to look at for the draft is adding in the provincial section. Now again, with the working draft, this is not the official constitution, so we can throw stuff in here that can be removed later. Just because it's in here doesn't mean it's permanent. Okay, so there's a very simple citizenry article on here, and I'm going to put kind of what I was working on, what I'd come up with, and then I'm going to put the same thing from Masenko's to kind of compare them. So now we've got 3 different Article 5s here. So, let's see, the first one is just a placeholder. No. So, one difference in part 1 is that we're trying to agree on how the provinces would be determined, and Masenko's proposed that legislature would decide, whereas mine was petition based. And so that's the only difference between that section. Section 2 is identical. And then there's basically the first 3 points, other than the legislature change, are identical.
It's a question of how we want provinces to be created and destroyed.
So my system, for some reason it doesn't get explained very well, but you start a petition, is that everyone picks their city of residence, and the citizens of that city can start a petition. If they get enough signatures, it gets stuck on the next ballot. And then if it passes the referendum, the state's formed. And they can also do other things like change to another state or disband the state. All done by petition.
Being resident of a specific city doesn't appeal to me.
Well,
really,
it
feels like it should just be state. But
it's just that way mostly for state formation and flavor. There isn't a mayor.
Yeah, but it also means if you're in a city without a state, without a legislator, do you not get to vote for a legislator?
No, you're part of the capitals. You're just part of the capital.
Well, no, you're saying are there cities outside of states though? Like if there's a city that hasn't been incorporated into a state.
Every city has something to it. If it's not in a state, it's part of the federal. The capital province is what it's referred to.
Okay. That's not clearly.
We need to put
It
that
actually
in.
says all
I'm gonna-
registered voters are considered residents of the capital province.
But then you're also saying that
Right,
people
but we
can
have to
move to
put.
cities, and they have to move to the city to start the. It.
Okay.
I'm gonna put
I
a
think
subsection A here, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
no, go ahead. Make any changes that we need to. This isn't just my document. I do turn off the editing outside of when it's being worked on, just so someone doesn't come through and delete everything maliciously. 'Cause that's
Well, in that case, you could just revert it back, but you know.
yeah, that's just
Oh, you just want. You don't want to deal with that?
part of my system is that if the settler that founds the city was created in another state, that state gets the city. Otherwise, it's part of the capital.
Okay.
And any captured cities go to the capital province.
What about cities that are stolen from us? What if like an entire state is captured?
Then those people are displaced and can either migrate to new cities, or by default they're back to the capital.
Is the state deleted?
Yes.
Because again, it's not. It's just not defined here.
Yeah, there's nothing. There's nothing for it to claim.
But it's not defined here, and I don't. It's not really clear at all that it
Yeah,
would
I'm a
be
little
eliminated.
concerned with the Constitution about putting too much definition.
Well,
that
you have to, for a system like this, you would have to cover things like
Right.
that, which
Yeah.
it is one of the
I mean,
benefits of having a legislature thing, because you can just say the
through.
legislature
I
can remove
just
that.
wasn't sure how much to put in the Constitution. But yeah, if all the cities are lost,
I think that
then you go back
It's
to the
it's one of
capital.
the issues with states and citizenship, where it does require a pretty decent amount of groundwork in the Constitution.
And worst case scenario, you could just put, oh, this could be edited by law instead of amendment, or the entire article, if you really want to be edited by the legislator easily.
Even then, I mean, there's so many things to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Never mind.
So we're not doing governors in exile?
I would maybe put it under the next section as a subsection, like right here.
Okay.
Like,
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, what's with
And
this
with-
only changing once a month thing?
That was. It's from the
we
Sengo's
talked, that was
draft.
not-
I really, my idea was that there's always a change of residence form. You can fill it out whenever you want, and 1 week before the election is when we count your citizenship. So when it comes to
Yeah.
like counting representatives and all that stuff,
I
go by
think the issue is
population at 1 week before.
it is foreseeable for a state or even the federal government to want to use citizenship for something, and a system that lends itself to that being.
I actually
accessible
agree with that.
and
I put 1 month for simplicity, but I'd be totally fine with what Espresso just proposed. That's like, as long as we have a system where people can't, like move to a province on the day of the election, vote there, and then move back to a different province, like, because that's just crappy. And
Yeah.
Well, it is kind of interesting that we put in the rights. A lot of these rights didn't make sense after reading them, but everyone has the right to freedom of movement and
Yeah.
resident within the borders of each
13
state.
to 16.
Yeah.
13 to 16
For
are
15, I'm kind of I
bad.
left that in as a joke. Because we talked about that. Was it last meeting?
You can just go to
It was
China
last
if you
meeting,
want
like
to.
2 meetings ago, where I said, hey, this was basically a political thing, and we just ripped a bunch of stuff that we thought may or may not apply to the democracy from the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, and just put it into the Constitution, because why not? And Espresso just copy-pasted that, and I told him, hey,
cut
there's...
down some wording. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess some of it's nice, but
I get it. I mean, it's up to debate, but I said, hey, this was made for China. There's like specific wording we changed it to apply to China, and what you did was just bold every time it said China.
Whose cities have been lost or captured are reassigned to the capital. Something along those lines.
If a city or province
How would people go about moving if they decided to?
There would be a. My idea is there would just be a form, and I actually have a prototype of it, that they just fill out the form, and it's at any time. Probably use your username and PIN, just so that you don't move somebody without their knowing. But you just fill that out, pick your city, and then at a certain date, the form is going to be hooked up to a spreadsheet that looks at what the most recent move request you did before that cutoff date, and that's where your residence is.
Makes sense to me. All right, cool.
So, I mean, for me, it would be a really simple thing to implement.
Yeah, because Masenko was saying something about it being annoying for people switching on vote day and then switching back.
That's why I want to say we get the 1 week cutoff, so we don't have come up with this is who's going to be in this on this ballot for who's going to represent that city. Get a rush of people, move into that city, then move out. So if you're going to move to a city, you have to have that determined before the election. You can change it the next day. It just won't count until the next election.
I like it.
My reworded clause.
Well,
5.3 is that good?
Like I said,
I would say
what I'm proposing, you can even change it during the election. It just won't count. The form will always be open.
okay, so like the
or it'd be like just kind of throwing in what I'm thinking, not how it should be worded.
right.
Please come to the doctor.
So what I just put in parentheses, I'm not quite sure how to word that. It's not that they can't move, it's that we should define when the citizenship is counted.
I also don't know if that's necessary to do.
I think it would be a lot easier if it just said you can't move, the week leading up to it.
That would actually be okay.
Functionally, it would be the same.
That because it just wouldn't be counted. They could still attempt to move. They just wouldn't be officially moving.
Because if you say something along the lines of it wouldn't be counted until, again, it takes away the ability to use citizenship for other things.
Right.
Province up until 1.
So this way you could put in the move request, and normally it would be automatic, but we could put a 1 week delay during the election. And that might actually be a little bit more work, but not much.
I mean, that's how the system works, but how we're going to word it. I think it would be way simpler to just ban people from moving within a week of election time.
Would it be reasonable to state that we just won't process any requests in the week prior to an election?
Now, how much of this should be legislated? It's kind of my rule on legislation that I'm going by is if it's something we want to be able to change, what can we put in? what can we leave out that won't mess things up, that would give flexibility to legislature?
Something that could be easily manipulated by legislature. Cough, cough. And I think this should definitely, if someone wants to change that, that would have to be a constitutional amendment. So I think that should be in the
Well,
Constitution.
so
Yeah,
here's
I agree.
by default, new founded cities shall be considered part of the capital province unless otherwise specified under rule of law. That part could be overridden by any legislation, which isn't so bad. My proposal was that if a state creates their own settler, they also get the city that settler builds.
Right. So the legislature could be like, with this clause in place, you could have the legislature. That can happen, right? You're basically giving the legislature free reign over how new cities, or specifically not new states, but new cities are integrated.
Well, what I can see happening is that the legislature creates like a military occupation bill or something like that, where if we invade a country and capture cities, they go to a military governor appointed by the legislator, rather than the capital district itself, or something like that.
I mean, that would be interesting, right?
Eh,
To have that flexibility there,
I
right?
think that could work.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I do kind of want to
Like-
protect the idea of the states being able to settle their own cities without the capital claiming them.
Yeah.
So I added that little 1B.
Use consistent language here. Are we going to use the term state or the term
Okay,
province?
state is the term I use. Province was the term that everyone else is using.
State
Let's just put
sounds
it
so
to a
much better.
vote here.
Province
Who
sounds so
wants
bad.
state?
State.
And who wants province?
State.
State.
State sounds
State.
way better.
State.
State.
All right.
Very much state.
Province is too many letters.
Yeah.
How many syllables?
And basically, in your system, they act more like states than provinces. Let's be honest.
Let's see. Find and replace.
Crap.
Now just need to fix some capitalization. Or actually,
Hey, can we remove the Article 5 citizenship? Because that's kind of being defined in...
yes. That's just was a placeholder till we got something in.
Okay. And the bottom part?
The bottom
Shouldn't
part,
that be...
that was Masenko's draft. There were 3 versions here. There was the placeholder, my draft, and Masenko's
Ah.
draft. And I just put them all
Okay.
together so we could compare them.
Alright. Oh yeah, that's right. You removed the legislative loophole from the dual mandate.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that was very useful in late Mark IV, where legislators basically were your default proxy. So...
Yeah, it was... I don't think it was meant to be there, but I'm glad it wasn't misused as much as it could have been. But that was never the intention of dual mandate.
Should we
The
put
proxy
exception? Proxies, yeah.
Proxies were left up to legislation, and we never really made a good legislation for it.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
Should we at least put an exception to proxy or no?
In Mark II, we had defined proxies, and it still made problems. I think proxies should be something legislated, or maybe we should just keep it vague enough that it could be a court case later. But
the issue, I think a potential issue is if we don't say proxies at all, or I think we had like a quarter of a proxy system in the Constitution, which really fucked this thing.
I had a pretty simple one in my proposal.
I think it's fair to put a concise one, just like members of government, or members of government can have a proxy. Define what a proxy is.
I'm gonna copy.
I'm gonna pull up what I got.
Section and paste it underneath. And I do like the wording of elected or appointed. And so it looks like the thing from Masenko's draft is the same thing as mine, because my working copy is Masenko's draft with a lot of edits done to it.
Oh.
So yeah, this actually is Masenko's draft I'm basing this on. I took his and I put the changes that I thought should be there, and then comparing his version and my version here. And I don't know if this provincial governments was something I put in there or not, but provincial should be state. And kind of the idea is that states are unrestricted in what they do with their own laws, as long as they don't supersede federal law.
Yeah, seems fair.
And so that's actually
I think
6 under Article 5. Provinces may choose their own form of government and local laws so long as they do not violate laws by legislature or this constitution.
Yeah, fair enough.
Didn't get to see the proxy stuff. Did you post it somewhere?
I didn't see proxies in wait, whose proxy stuff am I looking for? I wasn't sure who was saying about the proxy.
Masenko.
Masenko?
It's me,
I
Masenko.
don't see
Yeah.
the proxies in here.
I think it was just the second thing of Article 4. I'm gonna post it here.
My copy is exactly the same text. No government official may act as a proxy for any branch of government other than their own. Additionally, no individual may consecutively proxy for more than one position at a time.
I just put that in to Article 4 on the working draft.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't there before.
Okay. Now,
you want to discuss?
My thing is just with the wording. It's consecutive at the same time.
Concurrently.
Proxy is not defined either.
Yeah.
It's not an actual.
Yeah, it's
So
very vague.
Make a definition for proxy here. Make that a subsection. Okay.
Is a designee.
So I just defined a proxy as a person may act as a proxy for any elected or appointed official and carry out their duties with their permission. Not sure how that should be worded better, but that's basically the idea.
Is this too
I'll give
wordy?
it a shot.
Yeah, it should be
I'll,
worded
I'll,
better.
I'll give it a shot.
But that's a definition of what a proxy is.
You said people only, and I'm a little offended because that means RBBot can't be my
I said
proxy.
person.
Oh,
I didn't say anything
no.
about people. I said person.
Oh, you said people.
I said person. I wrote person.
I don't know. I'm also robotkin, so you're really hurting me.
But if you're
What do they call it,
robot,
triggering?
you have no feelings.
Nah, fuck.
He's a really advanced robot.
Oh, so you mean he's a robot that's approaching personhood and should be considered people?
Sentient.
No,
Yeah, well,
he's a
I'm not there
robot going away from personhood, but he still has feelings. Okay.
Quick, let's write that in the Constitution. We can't take any chances here, guys.
Okay.
Fine.
Article 4, Section 3. Oh, you know what? I'm actually editing. I'm editing the wrong, the wrong one.
My God.
So, dual mandate restrict. I've been editing the wrong document.
Oh boy.
So that is what I meant to post. And the other thing I posted was that it's legal to discriminate against robots.
Okay.
Yes.
Your thing is still saying a person may act as a proxy for an elected
that is what
or
I
appointed.
wrote.
Proxy isn't a defined term.
Right. I just wanted to post what I was saying, so it's. But
Okay.
now that I see that's on there, I don't need this.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't put it with the actual article. I just stuck it underneath.
You think which of the two do you think?
Proxy.
I go with B. I think
I
it's
think
a bit too
the only
wordy.
thing.
I think
No.
one.
The only thing A is missing is express consent of said individual. But the start to B seems kind of
when
weird.
it says appointed to fulfill, that kind of suggests that anyone could appoint them.
Yeah.
With that individual's, yeah.
Who was appointed?
Okay, I think that would work.
No. Wait here. Let me
I think we need to make it clear that the person that's doing it needs to appoint that person, because I can think of a couple people that would exploit that.
It has been exploited in the past.
Here. Okay, a proxy is defined as someone who is. Can I turn off this like text when someone's typing above their name showing up?
So.
It's so fucking annoying.
Don't.
Okay. Proxy is defined as someone who was appointed by an individual to fill said individual's duties of a. What the fuck? You guys are merging text. Proxy is defined as someone. Proxy is defined as someone who was appointed to
By an
fulfill
official?
Defined as
their duties. Someone who is appointed to fill the duties of a government official with expressed consent of said government official.
proxy is an individual given the authority to represent
An official?
or an elected or appointed official with their consent, or something like that. Let's try that.
I think we got it good here.
We don't.
Oh,
Just said below here. That's what the first one.
So,
Uh,
I pasted my draft on the Bill of Rights, where I made quite a few changes to it. I removed some unnecessary stuff, and I organized it into two categories between personal freedoms and legal rights.
oh.
Actually, these two are the same. They're the same right, so I can cut that out.
what do we think of that wording? That I just wrote below the.
That such shall be any individual granted the authority to represent an elected or appointed official with the expressed consent of said official. It should be a proxy is someone who is appointed by a government official to carry out said government officials'
That wording's actually
duty.
pretty good.
Duties and responsibilities.
The putting the with express consent of said individual on the end of B, it doesn't like weird to me.
Doesn't flow right.
Because it's like a proxy shall be an individual granted the authority to represent an elected appointed official. It's like
Elected or appointed to represent said.
isn't that what we had in A?
Yeah, but worded
Leading
completely.
A.
Crap.
It was worded weird, and I'm not section. I'm saying this is a rewrite to make A look neater.
So it should not be represent, it should be carry out duties or something like that.
Act in an
No. Carry out
an official
carry out the
capacity.
duties of their office. What does act in official capacity mean? It doesn't mean anything.
Yes, it does. It
No,
means
that means
do
they're just
things in an
acting officially. They're not doing the duties.
They have the
role.
authority to do what that office. Do.
Yeah, but saying act officially doesn't say that.
Well, it means their actions are legitimate, is what it's saying.
It's saying their actions are legitimate. It's not saying they're able to do these things.
Exactly what that means. It means that everything they do is legitimate.
I disagree, and it sounds bad anyway.
I mean, carry out.
I want to be right back.
Going over
Exercise.
previous constitutions to see how we defined it before. It turns out in Mark II we didn't. It actually just says.
Of course we didn't.
It says they may appoint a proxy to vote for them until the time that they return. The time is not to exceed 2 weeks.
I think we all kind of understand what a proxy is. I don't know if we need to define it or not.
The question
Here's
is, the question
someone
is
sue over
how will someone sue, and how likely is it that somebody's actually going to abuse the system?
But how likely are people going to abuse proxies? How well do you know the
Very
history
likely.
of Democraciv?
Oh, I was there during the Mark II Dark Ages. Don't worry.
Alright, what I just pasted is a copy of the Mark III Constitution's rule on proxies. I do not recommend we use that at all, but just so we can look and have reference from the previous time this came up.
Act in their stead. Why not just say a proxy shall be any individual granted the authority by an elected appointed official to act in their stead?
Which chat is this in?
Which
This is on the working draft
Ah.
doc right now.
Oh, I see.
I don't like. I would just use what we have right now instead of Mark III.
yeah.
Because this seems
Oh
bad.
no, I'm saying
This
we
seems-
did not use the Mark III, but I wanted to say if we're looking at the definition, here's how we defined it before.
Why not at the end say act in their stead for subsection A? Because I think ease is one thing, but being able to exercise their powers as well is something else.
That's
Like being
true.
able. So I think just to act in their stead.
And as frustrating as it is, we do need to leave some things open to interpretation.
Right.
Wait, isn't it the official's duty to carry out his powers or something like that?
And not necessarily. I mean, if you have someone with a veto power, for instance, they don't have a duty to veto things. They can veto things. That person might have the duty to stream the game while playing, or they might have a duty to show up to.
Are we go with act in their stead?
I like act in their
No,
stead.
I want to.
There we go. Actually, I'm going to use the bathroom. Be right back.
And see, that's actually the wording used in Mark III.
That's where I got it. I looked. I was like, "Ooh, that's a good wording."
Yeah, that's why I posted the Mark III. It's not something we need to use at all, but there could be some good information in there because that's how we approached the same issue like a year or so ago.
I think it's okay if there's a couple loopholes, just as long as it's neatly defined.
Yeah.
You know, we don't need to cover all our bases for this. If someone goes out of their way to like mess with this system, a law will be passed,
Right.
or a court case will be decided, right?
And we need to
And that's that.
leave stuff for the courts and the legislation to adapt with, and to, the court can be boring if we don't give them stuff to do. But just keep in mind, whatever we put in here that's restrictive, we can't change it easily later. Constitutional amendments are always a pain.
Yeah.
I've written my share of them.
The language there. Cool.
I always kind of regret that the patch amendment never got adopted. They did a total overhaul of the Mark II Constitution before Mark II ended.
Oh, that one.
Yeah,
That was
I
fun.
called it the patch amendment because it was like just a total revision of the entire Constitution.
Yeah, I remember reading through that. That was pretty wild.
How do we feel about this Article 4? Sort of neat little restrictions.
I don't think there's anything bad in there. It just defines. Of course, we can't call it dual mandate restrictions if we're also putting proxy law in there.
Rules for holding office. Or, Government rules sounds fine.
I'm back. What did I miss?
We're still discussing dual man.
Okay.
I'm doing some reformatting of the state section to kind of fall in line with the template and organize it into two sections, the first being states and the second citizens.
I think we should not right away, but at some point today, debate and discuss whether or not to have states formed by petition or by control of the legislature.
Right. Well, that's something we have plenty of time to debate over. But what do you think of how it's divided? Now, I can't seem to reset the numbering for some reason.
What are you trying to number?
Oh, well, you see, it still considers this to be part of the bullet list for Section 1 and Section 2.
There.
Right.
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Google Docs is a little bit finicky with that.
Yeah. So how does this look? It's the same text, I just changed the order of it and put in the sections.
Looks good. Also, have you seen Tiberius's comments?
Same as
I noticed.
He basically wants to remove, I believe.
Well, I do think that the right to form a state, that the fact that they can form a state, needs to be in there. But the question is, states may choose their own form of government. I'm thinking this part ought to be its own little subsection.
Personally, I think a lot of this Section 1 of states could be by letting the legislature just have control of a lot of these aspects.
I mean,
Or at least give the authority to the states to do it themselves.
All you need to do is define a head state, and that's it. Say, hey, at least if you have a head of state and X amount of people as defined by the legislature, you can have your state.
Yeah, and that's where it says states must choose a governor or a representative to act as governor. It is, you could have any kind of state you want as long as there is someone that speaks for the state. As long as you have some kind of leader, whether that's an actual leader or just someone who you nominate, doesn't matter.
I'm just confused why they need a leader.
Well, it kind of depends on how we're going to do it, but I'm thinking that states will probably control their own production and manage their own tiles. And also, I was toying with the idea of putting states in the executive branch as a pseudo-ministry or a small ministry. But
I think what we can do, since we're doing states, is state governors plus an elected president.
Right. Well, that was my idea. The ministry would be formed by an elected president, with the vice president doing the typical duties of serving as their backup and overseeing the legislature. But each governor of the state would then form their own council that would act as a ministry and keep the president in check as far as local matters go. They would fight for their city's representation.
I like that idea, but I would be wary putting too many roles like that into the Constitution.
Yeah, my concern is if we get a whole bunch of states, that's going to add more members, but it does seem like an interesting idea.
Well, you can have legislation that limits the number of states, so...
Right, and...
Well, that is if...
Let me see
if the legislature controls that.
May, by the choice of the people, be divided into states. It doesn't define a number of states, and it says they may be formed when a petition of the people. I would leave argument that that could be limited by legislature.
Yeah. I mean, this is just a groundwork in case we ignore this for all of the marks.
And,
so.
The whole thing with this, it is an early... I'm not even calling it a first draft because we're just throwing in ideas. We want to see how it's going to look. Then hopefully as more people look it over and more eyes go over it, we can start throwing stuff out or putting stuff in or rewording stuff as needed to get something that hopefully early in February we can just say, this is the draft, what do you think? Should we vote this or do more work on it? And hopefully they'll just vote on it. So I keep saying, why does this need to be in the Constitution? It's just defining what a state is and taking the restriction away from them. So...
Taking a restriction in what way?
I would say...
I'm saying that they can choose their own government as long as they don't violate the laws, is trying to take away restrictions from the states. Part of it is I don't want people to feel obligated to do... I don't want the states to be a very strict or complex thing where people have to have a role, they have to join a council if they want to do anything, that if the state gets small, it's not going to be tedious to go there. I want something that can emphasize role play, but also have some function. I figure if the states themselves can define what they want to do, it gives more room for creativity, and it just seems to...
So I also think that we shouldn't have governors in the Constitution, because one state might go, okay, we want to elect a governor, while another state might council, or another state might not even, maybe they'll just by direct voting vote what they want.
I worded a representative. So I'm thinking, like, when we have the game stream, we could have this representative, we could have a city with direct democracy, and the representative can just read off the vote or say, this is what the people voted on. Just one person speaking on their behalf. They don't have to be a governor themselves. That's why I use the...
Just when looking at it right now, it doesn't seem very clear. So I think we should work on the wording for that.
Again, I want to leave room for interpretation. Part of it is, until we know what kind of executive we have, it's kind of hard to define what a governor is until we're clear on the executive branch.
It's a good point.
Fair enough.
So we just leave it there as a placeholder until we figure out what we're doing?
That's what I would say, because I would like to see how cities work into the legislature and the executive.
little comment here so that we can come back to this.
So are we gonna move up, or are we gonna move down to basic rights or Bill of Rights?
I was going to put in the judicial branch because I think that should be good as is. So we pretty much just need to say, do we need to work on this at all?
I think Joe and Arch had plans to reform it, but not. I don't know. They haven't proposed anything solid yet.
Well,
you have to ask them.
I would then say, I don't know if Joe and Arch are available right now, but find out when they are and have them look this over, because they definitely have experience with this, and almost say maybe get Dometer's take on this.
Yeah. Well, Dometer had a very interesting post a few days ago about a, quote, game-oriented court. I encourage anybody listening to go check that out. Wouldn't do me justice to try and summarize it.
All right, let me see if I can find it. It just happens to be right here, game-oriented court. Alright, this is a lot of text, so...
Yeah. Essentially, I mean, I could try to boil it down, but he kind of wants us to look at the judicial branch not as he wants to start make decisions that are directly impacted in game of these meta pull battles that we've had in the past. And I responded to him, and I think that this judicial branch can be either. My philosophy is that the way we've had the judicial branch, that's perfectly something that could happen, but it's a matter of how people are playing around with the law. Relationship between the executive branch and the legislative branch comes into play, and whether or not the executive is an executive that exploits loopholes or an executive that is trying to implement the law, but there's some sort of conflict that occurs because of it, because of vagueness or something they do that they've interpreted the law incorrectly. That goes to the court, and that's sort of an in-game, quote-unquote, case that they can determine. It's kind of complicated, and it's kind of hard to determine.
I'm gonna have to read this in detail because it's written very wordily, so now I know how it feels when people are reading my stuff.
He gives two examples. He gives one example of, if I remember correctly, a case that comes to the court, which is the executive did something illegal and someone is suing and wants to the game session and go back a game session. It is kind of in this tricky position where, like, session is not something that can be done in real life, and there's like all sorts of weird ethical concerns about that, and can the court do something like that? And they end up just making the person give an apology or something, just like really weak. And that's an example of like a quote that we've had, quote unquote.
I mean, we had that case before.
Saying that's not the kind of court that we should have, and he gives a second example. It's about a legislature passes a couple laws, make it so that you have workers under the control of the governor reduce them, and that anytime those workers can be transferred to another governor, or like only counts as your worker within your borders or something like that. I don't exactly remember the scenario he gave, but essentially it led to a complication where like the worker was outside the borders. It was like unclear as to who controlled it, but there was also this other law where like the president could basically control nets that aren't belonging to anybody else. So like maybe it would be the president's unit, and then like when it returns to the borders, who does it belong to? And like that would be a good case for the court. That would be an example of something that would be an interesting and fun case. Not saying that that's a bad case, Bird. I'm saying that that was an example of what Domador said was a bad case.
Yeah, it's just
and
so dense trying to read all the details on it. And I just tried printing it out. My printer just printed out something weird. So,
but I guess my main point was that's not really a matter of how we structure the court.
right.
That's a matter on how we apply the law and how our relationship with the law is. Right. Well, go ahead, Coffee.
Oh, I said it doesn't really sound like it's that big a deal to apply that to the court as it is. That it didn't seem like there's anything in there that was structural.
Exactly. I'd take a read when you have the time for it. It's a very
I plan to read through it in detail.
And I also made a very long comment on the post as well, so feel free to read that through.
I just wanted to do a printout so I could read it offline, and my printer only printed out about 6 copies of the not game-oriented section, but only half of it. So
anyway, I like the judicial branch as is personally.
Yeah, that's why I kind of wanted to do the judicial branch here, because I can't see much that needs to be added to it, and I don't see anything that that bothers me in it. I thought it worked out pretty well for Mark IV, and so this is pretty much the same as.
I mean, we didn't really have problems with the court until, the court was investigated for corruption because some guy rage quit. Oh yeah, told you about the 14-page document already, have I?
Okay, well, someone just put, is that Tiberius said the default size would be 5. Well, it says the court shall be 3 to 5 justices.
That was decided in the first legislature.
The exact size shall be determined under the rule of law. So, question of whether or not we want to have a default size. The legislature didn't pass any sort of law defining it.
Yeah, I don't really think it's that big a deal. That is something that could come up with legislation at the early on in the game. Deciding just how many justices we get could just be.
I mean, technically, it's just how many legislators, justices the legislator now accepts as a nomination to the Supreme Court. Technically, you don't actually need a law for that. So.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I really think it's fine as it is, but the default size could be in there. I don't think it's necessary. It is kind of implied with Section 2B2 that any enacted legislation that would reduce the size, so it kind of suggests that that 5 will that you start with a high number with potential for reduction. Going to say reduce or increase because that gives the legislature the ability to reduce them, but doesn't apply the same rule to increasing to 5.
Right. That's a good point.
So
I was just thinking. I was just thinking like. Um, I could imagine the legislature. Like I could imagine a situation where you'd have sitting justices, where it would reduce it, and then where did those who gets to be on the court out of those justices, right? Whereas increasing it, you could just add more people. That's the kind of perspective I was going with it. But I can see why it's important to add that second part too.
I just switched the order of these so that we would go for the section that says 3 to 5 justices to the next breath being the exact size shall be determined, so that it doesn't break that chain of thought. It doesn't go from the topic of the number of justices to vacancies to the number of justices. And not really much of a change, I've just changed the order of it.
Think that's good? Question mark.
Default size would be 5. So do we want to keep the default size?
No. I think we handled it well at Mark 4, so I think we could handle it well at Mark 5.
Okay, so take that out.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tiberius.
It's okay, fair enough.
Okay, so let's take a look at the rights then. There's the original Bill of Rights and then the divided, revised Bill of Rights. I took out a lot of stuff that didn't really apply and tried to combine some stuff, I think.
Yeah, I was just looking over, make sure you add everything, and I think you have everything, and it looks better.
One that I added was due process, because I noticed that was missing.
Yeah. Yeah, this looks a lot better than, tacked on to the original Bill of Basic Rights.
And I can change the formatting appropriately.
Oh crap. There we go. How you do this again? Do you want these broken up into separate sections or in the same?
2 sections is good, because they were divided anyway. I actually originally did it in 3 sections, with one was citizens, but after I got to working on the citizens, it was just two entries. So I kind of merged them and added them to freedom.
No, that didn't work. No, let's see.
Okay, so yeah, it's quite wordy, Tiberius. The exercise, everyone shall be subject to such limitations as determined by law. So, I am a native English speaker and I don't know what it means.
Let me see if I can try to decipher it.
In the exercise of their rights and freedom, everyone shall be such limitations as determined by law solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect for the rights of others and meeting the just requirements of a moral public order and general welfare. And
okay. So what it's saying,
you can't restrict your freedoms unnecessarily.
Also means that you can restrict your freedoms in the pursuit of making sure your freedoms aren't infringing on other people's freedoms.
So
Isn't there an easier way to
we
say
need
that?
to word that in about less than 1/2 of the words.
I just think just get the fuck out.
Can we get rid of the
get rid of it.
morality?
Yeah, just get rid of that shit.
So we got rid of morality and everything else. We are now immoral.
Actually, there was another clause in the original amendment that said if the government may take action to protect the social welfare of the society, and that got removed quick because people realized that could be exploited by literally anyone and the government to get away with any case. Because you could argue, hey, it's for the better good. Or something like that. I mean, I'll link you the original clause if you want, but whatever.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have number 5, the enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the Constitution, covers that issue that your rights don't infringe on others.
I think we're good there. I think we're good.
Alright, so
Is there anything else we want to go over today, or is that it?
the executive and legislative are going to be a really heavier topic. So
Wasn't Mark 4 like most of it debating how the legislature and executive would be structured?
yes. So we still need to be minimalist, but we do need to make sure there is a separation between the two. As it were, there was a squabble over the powers of the legislation and the ministry, that it seemed like the ministry had too much power when the legislature actually had the power to rein in the ministry whenever they wanted.
But they never did.
They never used it.
I mean, it got better through the end of the mark, but we never went ham on the ministry.
Yeah, and so definitely we should not be using these this ultra legalese that it's originally written in. I would not be opposed to rewording everything in here into a common thing, especially
common language.
Yeah, because we have, like, as Tiberius is pointing out, when you're not a native English speaker, and we've got quite a few, this is frustrating reading. One of the problems when we had our advertising and we had that big recruitment push in Mark II was people didn't want to read the Constitution. It was more dense than the U.S. Constitution with all amendments.
How do you manage that?
You want to see it?
Link it. Like, how do you manage to be more dense than the U.S. Constitution?
Because we spelled out so much.
Is that why there's been a push for minimalism?
Yes. Well, the thing is, Mark II's Constitution was actually very well organized. Mark III was longer. Mark III was not as well organized, not as it was messy.
Hmm. I mean, I think I remember Mark III being super crazy and
Yeah.
having like clauses like you can't delete spaceship parts. That kind of triggered me because it made no sense whatsoever. Being in the Constitution.
Yeah.
Mark III Constitution was very reactionary.
It was. It was very much a we hated Mark II, let's change it all kind of thing.
There's a lot of stuff that people did in Mark II that the Constitution drafters were like, we need to rein these
The
in.
Constitution was very complicated. And one thing I felt when we were writing it is that I really wanted to make sure that different sections interacted and were consistent with each other. We didn't get to do a final draft, so what got published is full of editing errors.
My God. Also, Article 1's moderation, and now it's a separate doc.
Right.
That should. Are we gonna look over that during this convention or no?
We can definitely talk about it. I was one of the ones that pushed to remove it because there was efforts to amend the Constitution section to rein in moderation, even though Section 1 was protected in the Constitution, so only it could not be amended, even though it was very broken. I found a loophole in that I exploited that allowed
By God.
changes to go to that, because there is a section of there's a power called emergency amendments, which are not qualified as the same as regular amendments.
So you just
I declared the some of the processes that were protected to be an emergency, and just kept renewing the emergency amendment by letting it expire, then reenacting it.
Oh my God, this Mark II Constitution is so nostalgia.
Okay.
Alright, what happened?
Ipple Johnson says, please tell me this isn't our draft constitution.
That's updated 2016.
I just got a phone call, so, well.
Actually, I'll be heading off now. Are we gonna do anything with the executive or legislative now, or are we just gonna leave it off for next meeting?
I'm getting a phone call, so, hold on just a few minutes while I answer this.
Okay. Then I'm Gabriel. It's been nice talking to you guys. See ya!
Bye.
How are y'all doing?
Nothing. Just sitting here. Reading Mark II's Constitution.
Yeah.
Easy.
So I'll call him back, so. I could put the, well, because I made a lot of changes, I think, to Masenko's, because he's proposing a 2-chamber system, and I was proposing a 1-chamber system, and we're trying to figure out how to reconcile those. I decided that we should have a 2-house system, the first house being made of elected legislators, and the second one being composed of a big glass house. I'm not sure how well that would work.
It wouldn't, but it would be great.
So, yeah, it's going to take us a while to have a real debate over the legislative branch proposals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we probably should end it for now and come back to this. Let's see. Has Thursday been working, or Friday?
Fridays and the weekend. I could do Thursday too, technically. Just depends on the time.
Well, the time this one started, was this time decent?
I mean, I think I can do Thursday at. When did it start?
Well, it was supposed to be 3 o'clock my time, and it's 5 o'clock now.
Yeah, so 2 o'clock my time.
Yeah, is that gonna work or?
Works for me.
All right. Well, I do need to.
I don't know if it works for everyone else, but
check and make sure that I don't have something going on, but it should work. So, all right.
thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Anything else?
Y'all later.
All right. And we just about gave Jonsinian a heart attack, which was the intention all along. Anyway, end of meeting. Thanks for showing up.